It starts at a family dinner I never wanted to attend. I walked in already knowing how the evening would unfold, with the same familiar pattern of loud conversations, forced smiles, and that quiet awareness that I would once again be the invisible presence at the edge of every moment. I sat down at the table, trying to blend into the background, hoping the evening would pass without another reminder that I had never truly belonged in the center of my own family. My cousin was glowing before he even stood up. He always had that natural arrogance, a confidence shaped by years of admiration and indulgence. The family adored him. Every achievement of his was celebrated like a historic event, while mine barely earned a nod. When he rose with his glass raised, the room settled with an energy that wrapped around him like a crown. He announced his engagement with pride, filling his voice, and applause erupted immediately. Chairs scraped, hands clapped, and smiles widened as if the entire table had been waiting solely for this moment. I clapped too, quietly, not wanting to draw attention. But even that small gesture did nothing to shield me. My cousin turned toward me with that look I had known since childhood, a mixture of amusement and superiority. He enjoyed these moments far more than he should have. He delivered his comment with ease, dropping it into the center of the table. He said I was not suitable for his engagement party and that he preferred people who mattered. The laughter that followed stung in a way I cannot fully describe. It spread slowly, like a ripple across water, until the entire table was caught in a wave of amusement at my expense. My face heated, my chest tightened, and I waited for someone to say something. I waited for my parents to speak up, to offer even the smallest sign that the cruelty was too much. They remained silent, staring at their plates as if silence were easier than confrontation. The dinner moved on as though nothing had happened. Plates were passed around, new subjects filled the air, and I sat with a hollow feeling that grew heavier with each moment. I heard their voices without truly listening. The humiliation settled into my body like a weight I could not shake. I looked around the table and saw people I had helped, supported, and protected at different times in my life, and yet not one had stepped in for me. I excused myself before dessert. I left quietly, without giving anyone the chance to pretend they cared. I walked to the bathroom for a moment of breath and stared at my reflection under the harsh lighting. I saw a face tired of trying, tired of waiting for validation, tired of accepting a place that had never been offered with sincerity. When I stepped outside, the cold air felt clearer than anything inside the house. I walked to my car, each step grounding me in a stronger truth. The drive home felt like distance expanding between me and a life I no longer wished to keep. Something inside me had shifted permanently. A door had closed, and I understood that I would never sit at that table as the same person again. I drove home in complete silence, letting the road stretch ahead while the memory of that dinner replayed again and again in my mind. Every moment I had ever supported my cousin returned with painful clarity. I remember the afternoons when he called in desperation because he had lost another job and needed a recommendation. I remembered writing the letter myself, convincing others that he deserved a chance he had never earned. I thought about the money I had lent him, the money he never paid back and never even mentioned again. I remember the nights I had driven across town to pick him up because he was too drunk to make it home safely, the nights I took risks so he would not end up arrested. Each memory hit me with the same question. How had I spent years helping someone who could publicly belittle me without hesitation? When I reached my home, the quiet inside felt different. It was not peaceful. It was heavy, like a room holding its breath. I sat in the living room without turning on the lights and allowed myself to feel the exhaustion I had ignored for too long. I had carried loyalty like a burden that no one had asked me to carry, and no one had appreciated when I did. I had given pieces of myself to a family that rarely noticed the effort. The humiliation at the dinner table had not created the wound. It had simply revealed how deep it already was. Hours passed without sleep. I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling, feeling a strange mix of sadness and clarity. The house felt colder than usual, and the silence felt heavier than it had in years. Around 2 a.m, something inside me settled with a clear and quiet decision. I knew I did not want revenge. I knew I did not want dramatic explanations or confrontations. I wanted distance. I wanted absence. I wanted my life to stretch away from theirs long enough for me to see who I was without their expectations pressing on me. I stood up, walked to my desk, and opened my laptop. The light from a screen filled the room like a small sunrise. I typed the words Hawaii last-minute flights and stared at the list that appeared. I did not compare prices or schedules. I clicked the first one, a one-way ticket, a clean break disguised as a spontaneous trip. The decision felt simple and safe, as if my heart had already made it long before my hands moved. I packed a small bag with clothes, a toothbrush, and nothing else. I did not want to prepare for anything. I wanted to disappear for a while, without explanations or obligations. I left my phone on airplane mode, not because I feared their reactions, but because I finally understood that I did not owe them access to me. Before sunrise, I stepped outside and locked the door behind me. The morning air felt fresh, like the first breath after a long dive. I walked to my car, placed my bag on the seat, and drove toward the airport with a calm I had not felt in years. I was not running away. I was choosing myself, and that choice felt like the beginning of an entirely new story. Hawaii felt unreal the moment I stepped out of the airport. Warm air wrapped around me like a gentle welcome, carrying the scent of salt, flowers, and something peaceful I had not felt in years. The sky looked wider than any sky I had ever seen. The ocean roared softly in the distance, as if inviting me to forget everything I had left behind. I took a long breath and felt something loosen inside my chest. For the first time in a long while, I did not feel watched, judged, or expected to fit into a place that never fit me. I settled into a small hotel near the shore. Nothing luxurious, nothing loud. The room had white walls, soft lighting, and a window that opened to the sound of waves. That sound became my companion. It filled the quiet moments that used to feel empty. I woke up before sunrise on my first morning and walked down to the water. The ocean was calm, turning gold under the early light. I stepped into it slowly, letting the water rise around my legs, then my waist, then my chest. I swam without thinking, without pressure, letting the waves decide the rhythm. It felt like the sea was washing away every heavy thought I had carried. My days developed a gentle routine that felt like medicine. Each morning, I swam as the sun climbed. Then I walked barefoot along the sand, feeling every grain under my feet, grounding myself in the simple truth of being present. I bought fruit from small stands on a roadside and tasted flavors that reminded me how long I had lived on autopilot. Pineapple so sweet, it almost tasted unreal. Mango soft enough to melt. Coconut water straight from the shell. Every simple thing felt like a gift. No one on the island knew my story. No one knew my cousin, my parents, or the silence I had carried home after that dinner. I was just another traveler passing through. The freedom in that anonymity made me feel lighter. I sat near the shore most afternoons and listened to children laughing, waves crashing, and birds calling across the sky. Those sounds filled spaces in me that had remained hollow for years. As the days passed, I noticed how my body changed. My breathing slowed. My shoulders relaxed. My mind softened its grip on old memories. Each sunrise pulled another thorn from my heart. I laughed out loud one afternoon while watching a surfer fall 3 times in a row, then rise with the playful determination of someone who refused to be discouraged. That small moment reminded me how long it had been since I allowed myself to laugh freely. I stopped checking my phone. At first intentionally, then naturally. I placed it in a drawer and forgot about it for entire days. The quiet felt sacred. I understood slowly that I was building a world without the weight of their expectations. A world where I existed on my own terms. A world where I could breathe. Hawaii did not fix everything, but it gave me space. It gave me silence. It gave me room to see myself clearly. And with each passing day, I felt the old life grow smaller behind me, like a distant shore I no longer needed to return to. For the first time, I felt like I belonged to myself, and that felt like freedom. I was lying on the warm sand one afternoon, watching the waves break in slow rolls across the shore, when my phone vibrated for the first time since I arrived. At first, I ignored it. I had learned to let the sound of the ocean replace the buzzing of obligations. But the vibration came again, then again, and soon it became a steady tremor beneath my towel, as if the world I had escaped was knocking on the door of my peace with both fists. I reached for the phone reluctantly, already feeling the shift inside me. The screen lit up with a flood of notifications that seemed endless. Missed calls, text messages, voicemails, all for numbers I knew too well. All from a family I had left behind without a word. Every alert carried the same tone of urgency. Some messages insisted that I had to call immediately. Others demanded to know where I was. A few carried a nervous desperation that made my stomach tighten. For a moment, I simply stared at the screen, watching the list grow longer as new alerts stacked on top of old ones. The calm of the afternoon cracked slightly as the past tried to pull me back. I had not expected this. I thought my disappearance would go unnoticed for a while. I thought the silence would protect me longer. I thought their lives would continue without any interruption, just as mine had always done when I was the one missing. I sat up slowly and looked around the beach. People were laughing in the distance, children were building sandcastles near the water, and a couple walked hand in hand along the surf. Life here moved gently, untouched by anything that existed beyond the islands. I had come to Hawaii to breathe, to forget, to rebuild a version of myself that had been buried under years of quiet endurance. I was not ready to return to the weight I had left behind. I tapped the screen once more and scrolled through the messages. My mother had sent several, each one shorter and more frantic than the last. My sister had written a long paragraph filled with worry and confusion. Even relatives I barely spoke to had left missed calls. The number of notifications felt unnatural, almost alarming. Something had happened, something big enough to unsettle all of them at once. Yet even with that possibility hanging in front of me, I felt no urge to respond. Instead, I turned off the screen and placed the phone face down beside me. My heart beat faster than before, but the soft crash of the waves reminded me that peace is a fragile thing. I had worked hard to find it. I was not ready to surrender it at the first sign of panic. I lay back down, closed my eyes, and let the sun warm my skin. The phone remained silent after that, but I knew it was only temporary. A new chapter had begun the moment those messages arrived. Something had shifted far away from the beach where I rested, but I was not ready to cross that distance. Not yet. That night, curiosity finally broke through the quiet shield I had built around myself. The beach had helped me forget for a few hours, but once I returned to my room, the silence felt heavier. My phone lay on the table where I had abandoned it earlier. A small part of me hoped that whatever waited inside, it would be simple. A minor concern, a misunderstanding, something I could dismiss as easily as I had dismissed their voices for so many years. I plugged the phone in, sat on the edge of the bed, and waited. When the screen lit up, the notifications poured in like a storm that had been gathering without warning. The first thing I noticed was the number of voice messages from my mother. The duration of each message grew longer as the list continued. I tapped the first one, and her voice filled the room with the sound of someone crying. She sounded frightened, broken, and desperate to reach me. My chest tightened as I listened to her steady stream of panic. She kept repeating my name with a tremble I had never heard from her before. I moved to the messages from my aunt. She had sent several short texts that made little sense at first glance. Words like disaster and unbelievable and everything went wrong appeared between scattered spaces. I scrolled further, piecing together fragments of a story that felt surreal. My sister had written a long paragraph asking where I had gone and why I was unreachable. She seemed torn between anger and fear, as if she did not know which emotion was justified. Then I saw a message from my cousin's fiancé. She wrote that she never intended to witness something so cruel, that she had no idea he would speak to me that way, and that she felt ashamed even though she had not said anything herself. The sincerity in her words surprised me. She had always seemed distant during family gatherings, polite but reserved. Seeing her name on my screen sent a strange wave of disbelief through me. I had not expected her to reach out at all. The final message came from a family friend who rarely contacted me. The words were simple, but carried an unsettling weight. Everything blew up. You need to know what happened. My fingers hovered over the screen as if touching it would trigger something I was not prepared to face. I read the sentence again, letting it sink into me slowly. Something had collapsed back home. Something big enough to shake the people who had always acted as though nothing could disturb their perfect world. I sat back and stared at the wall, feeling my breath grow shallow. I had left to protect my peace, to reclaim my sense of self, to create distance between myself and a lifetime of silent wounds. Now the life I had walked away from was unraveling without me. I felt a mix of emotions I could not easily name. Part concern, part disbelief, part something close to vindication, though I refused to fully acknowledge it. I looked at the phone again, its screen glowing faintly in the dim room. The world I had stepped away from was calling me back with urgency. Yet even as the weight of the messages lingered in the air, I did not move to respond. I remained still, letting the reality of the situation unfold in my mind. Something had fallen apart, and I had not been there to hold it together. For the first time, I realized that maybe I was never meant to. I finally gathered enough courage to call my sister. My fingers hesitated above the screen, but the questions inside me pushed harder than the fear of what I might hear. When she answered, her voice carried a strain I had never heard before, a tightness that revealed more than any words she tried to form. As she spoke, the truth hit me with the force of a storm I had not prepared for. She told me the engagement party had turned into a spectacle no one would forget. It happened shortly after the celebration began. A guest stood up and addressed the room with a seriousness that silenced the music and the chatter. He began revealing story after story about my cousin. Every lie, every unpaid debt, every betrayal wrapped carefully behind the polished image my cousin had created. My sister said the room grew colder with each revelation, as if everyone present was watching a pedestal collapse in slow motion. My cousin tried to laugh it off at first. He acted as though it was a misunderstanding or an exaggeration. But the guest continued. More details, more examples, more truths that could not be brushed aside. My cousin's face shifted from amusement to confusion, then to anger. Before long, panic took over, and he searched the room for someone to blame. That was when he turned my absence into a weapon against me. He shouted that I had orchestrated everything, that I had planned the entire spectacle out of jealousy and spite. Hearing that made my stomach twist. I had come to Hawaii to find peace, not to create chaos. Yet there he was, using my absence as a shield, pointing every accusation in my direction. My sister told me that his desperation only fueled the tension. People who had admired him began to question how deep his lies truly went. The room felt divided, the air heavy with confrontation. In the midst of his outburst, my aunt finally stepped forward and revealed the truth. She told everyone that I had left because he humiliated me at the family dinner and that my disappearance had nothing to do with the chaos unfolding in front of them. The room shifted instantly. Eyes turned away from him. The atmosphere changed from confusion to disapproval. His fiancée stared at him with disbelief, the kind that grows from realizing the person you plan to marry is not who you thought he was. She walked out before he could reach her. My sister said she left the room in silence, holding her dress so it would not drag, refusing to look back. Guests started leaving right after. Chairs scraped the floor. Conversations dropped into whispers. No one wanted to be part of the spectacle any longer. The celebration collapsed into disorder, leaving only scattered decorations and stunned relatives behind. When my sister finished describing the scene, I felt a mixture of emotions that I struggled to sort through. Relief, sadness, anger, even a strange sense of detachment, as though the chaos belonged to a world I had already stepped out of. She told me everyone was looking for me, not because they blamed me, but because they finally realized I had been the only one missing from the disaster. I sat in silence after the call ended. The waves outside continued their steady rhythm, unmoved by the turmoil unfolding thousands of miles away. I understood that the truth had finally caught up with my cousin, and for once, I had nothing to do with the storm that revealed it. The messages began early the next morning. My phone lit up again and again, each alert pulling me back toward a world I no longer felt tied to. My cousin had sent long paragraphs filled with frantic explanations, desperate excuses, and attempts to rewrite the disaster at his engagement party. He kept insisting that he needed to talk to me. He tried to sound calm, then remorseful, then defensive, then humble, shifting tones as if one of them might finally reach me. I read the first few lines, then stopped. I felt no desire to respond. Soon after, my mother sent several messages begging me to come home. She tried to assure me that things had changed, that the family understood now, that I had been mistreated. Her words carried a weight I did not know how to absorb. For years, she had remained silent when I needed her voice most. Now she was reaching for me with urgency, as if a few texts could undo the silence of a lifetime. My aunt sent a long apology. She wrote that she regretted staying quiet during the dinner, that she should have defended me, that she understood why I chose to disappear. Her guilt was clear. It seeped through every sentence, revealing a woman who had finally become aware of her own passivity. I read her message twice, not because I needed the apology, but because I wanted to understand what had awakened in her. Even my uncle, who rarely acknowledged me beyond polite greetings, sent a voice note. He said I had always been the more responsible one. Hearing his voice say those words felt surreal, as though the world had tilted overnight and exposed truths no one had dared to speak before. I played the message once, then set the phone aside. I did not know how to react to years of dismissal suddenly being replaced with admiration. As the messages continued to arrive, a strange calm settled over me. The cousin who once claimed I did not deserve to be at his engagement party had become the one everyone needed. He had fallen from the pedestal the family had built for him, and now they were searching for stability in the only person who had never sought praise. The irony felt almost poetic. I spent the afternoon walking along the shore, letting the sand warm my feet as the sun dipped toward the horizon. The sky transformed into soft shades of orange and pink, reflecting across the waves in gentle strokes. I moved slowly, absorbing the peaceful rhythm of the ocean. Each wave carried a reminder that life shifted constantly, often without warning, shaping new truths from old wounds. As I walked, I realized I felt no rush to return their calls. The distance between us was no longer a punishment. It was a boundary I needed in order to breathe. I had spent years shrinking myself to maintain peace in a family that never offered the same effort. Now, without doing anything, I had become the one they turned to. Power had shifted in the simplest way, not through revenge, not through confrontation, but through truth finally rising to the surface. My cousin's image had cracked under the weight of his own choices, and the family was trying to cling to the one person who had never carried deception. I stopped at a rock near the water and watched the waves break again and again. I thought about the version of myself sitting at that dinner table, absorbing another insult in silence. I thought about how quickly everything could change when one life finally stops bending to please others. The ocean roared softly against the shore. I closed my eyes and let the sound fill me. For the first time, I understood what real power felt like. It was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was the quiet certainty that I no longer needed their approval to feel whole. I walked back in the fading light, knowing that something in me had shifted forever. I did not need to answer their messages. I needed to continue choosing myself. I spent my last morning in Hawaii, standing on a cliff that overlooked the endless stretch of ocean. The sun rose slowly, painting the sky in gentle shades of gold and pink, as if the entire horizon were offering a quiet farewell. I felt the wind brush against my skin, warm and steady, carrying with it the scent of salt and distant rain. Below me, the waves rolled in rhythmic layers, each one crashing and retreating with a certainty that made everything inside me feel lighter. My phone buzzed again and again in my pocket. I did not need to check it to know who it was. Messages from my cousin, from my mother, from relatives who had barely acknowledged me before the chaos erupted. Their words waited for me behind screen, but I did not feel the urge to open a single one of them. I let the vibrations fade into the background while I kept my eyes on the sun rising higher, warming the sea and the stones beneath my feet. For For the first time in a long while, I understood something I had never taken the time to consider. Distance does not punish anyone. Distance reveals. It pulls away the noise and leaves only truth behind. My cousin had revealed exactly who he was when he chose to humiliate me in front of everyone. My family had revealed where their loyalties stood when they stayed silent and allowed the insult to settle into the air without protest. And I had revealed something to myself too. I had allowed their silence to define my worth for far too long. Standing on that cliff, I realized I deserved more than endurance. I deserved more than a lifetime of swallowing pain quietly. I deserved respect, even from the people who had never learned how to give it. The peaceful morning wrapped around me like a reminder that healing does not always come with answers. Sometimes it comes with understanding, and that was enough for now. I walked along the cliff path for a while, listening to the waves below. Each step felt steady, like a promise I was making to myself. I had arrived in Hawaii carrying the weight of years. I was leaving with something lighter, something clearer. The island had not erased my past. It had simply given me the space to see it without flinching. Later, at the airport, I sat near a large window and watched planes rise into the sky. My phone continued buzzing in my pocket, but I did not reach for it. I did not feel anger toward anyone. I felt a quiet separation, the kind that grows not from resentment, but from clarity. I understood that returning home did not mean returning to the person I had been before. Something inside me had shifted for good. When I boarded the plane and found my seat, I turned off my phone before it had the chance to light up again. This time the gesture was not an escape. It was a choice, a decision to carry my peace with me instead of letting others pull it away. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and listened to the hum of the engines as the plane prepared for takeoff. For the first time in my life, choosing myself did not feel selfish. It felt necessary. It felt right.